Hello, this is the fifth series under What is Intelligence. In this one, most of the differences between material and living beings, human being and animals are discussed. Avoiding a problem is definitely considered as intelligence. That is, the paths are already there. We have to select the right path as the fish is shown symbolically doing it. And similarly, suppose there are two paths and two drivers are going in different cars. Look at that one. The red car is going in a difficult path and the blue car is going in a easy path. Definitely, we will say that the blue car person is a more intelligent. He selected a better path, whereas the red car person is unfortunately unknowingly selected the difficult path. Now let us consider another important one. Look at this, there is a 10 ohm resistance at one side and 5 ohm resistance at other side in a parallel circuit. Obviously we know that one electron goes through 10 ohm resistance and at the same time two electrons will go through 5 ohm resistance, and that is just because we know that the flow of electrons are inversely proportional to the resistance. We will never call the two electrons that went through 5 ohm resistance as more intelligent and the other one through 10 ohm resistance as less intelligent. We will attribute this to what is called as natural law. Why nature is having that law? That is extremely important. Suppose if the electrons were to think and move, only two electrons would have moved through 5 ohm resistance and none through 10 ohm resistance. Now with this natural law of inversely proportional to resistances, in the stipulated time 3 electrons crossed, and probably because of that only the nature is having such a law, or we do not know. Say I have done some similar thing now. The condition given is urgently many soldiers should have to move from the left end to the right end of the country where the border is there as quickly as possible. Therefore what they will do is some two soldiers will go in an easy path. Look at that one soldier who is jumping the difficulties and going. Totally 3 soldiers will go, and that is exactly similar to what we did in case of electrons. But here we call that the soldiers knew that it is difficult path, and even then they moved like that because of the given condition. So whenever there is a life existence, we attribute that as intelligence. Whenever it is not, we will say something else like natural law. Or again the same question, whether what we are calling as intelligence is also due to the complex natural laws. Yet another very important factor that everyone considers as an attribute to intelligence is learning. Learning is attributed to intelligence. Look at this simple thing. And there is a missing number, and a person who knows the logic of summation will select that appropriate number 16 and pushes it there, and without learning he cannot do this. And similarly we can have many such things, and another simple example is finding LCM for two numbers given here is 12 and 16. Without knowing what is LCM, nobody can find out, but he who knows the concept of LCM can easily say that it is 48. These are some of the important human learning things. The learning phenomena is not just restricted to only human beings. As we know, birds, insects and almost all living beings will learn and do something new. Nowadays it has been observed that the crows or some such birds are throwing very hard shells which are difficult for them to cut open on traffic heavy roads, where they expect vehicles to move on that particular shell to make it to cut open, and then the bird will come and eat the thing that is inside. There is one wonderful phenomena called as hundredth monkey effect. Of course, it is based on a report that on a beach where human beings were used to eat potatoes, sweet potatoes, they were washing it and then eating it. Slowly, one monkey learned that one, according to the report, and then the other monkeys also started doing the same thing by observing the first monkey. It is also reported one of the very strange thing that on an island which is far away from this particular beach, a set of monkeys were observed to be doing the same thing. Then the author who published the paper claims that one monkey from this particular beach swam across and taught the washing phenomena to the other monkey. Of course, that was finally disproved. Yet another interesting phenomena was also observed, that a very small insect started building its nest in plug sockets. Remember, another thing is the plug socket it was selecting in such a way that was not at all being used. So that means it will observe for some days and finally select that particular socket which is not being used at all. So this is also a learning phenomena. Then after some days it was noticed that simultaneously that phenomena of building the nest in the plug socket was observed in many countries which were far away from each other, as symbolically shown here. There was no possibility of this particular insect going there and teaching it. So it is very clear that every other insect is capable of learning the same thing almost at the same time. Yet another important information is that certain monkeys are known to eat certain parts of the tree like bark, leaf, etc. when there is a body pain, and finally when analyzed those parts of the tree will contain some kind of a painkiller. A very interesting experiment has been done on ants, that is Scientific American report said in a tree they made some two fungus to grow as shown here as F1 and F2, where F1 is a safe fungus and F2 is a dangerous fungus for the ants. So that means when the ants were allowed to go from the ant hill, some ants went at F1 and very few went at F2. Yet another extremely interesting thing is they kept a cure, that is hydrogen peroxide is the cure for fungus F2. So those ants went to fungus F1, returned back directly to the ant hill. Those ants went to F2 and got infected with F2, straight away went to hydrogen peroxide, consumed little of the hydrogen peroxide and then went back to ant hill. This is extremely interesting thing. How did it came to know that the hydrogen peroxide is the cure and it has got infection? So here we are clearly seeing that animals are somehow getting the solution even without realizing the problem itself. First of all, in case of the monkey eating some bark or leaf or whatever it is as a painkiller, we can argue that it has come from so many thousands of years and somehow stored as a genetical memory, and therefore it is automatically doing it as a reflex action. But In case of the new experiment about ants, that H2O2 or hydrogen peroxide chemical is a new one, and that information cannot be stored in the genetical memory of the ants because we have done it. So that information itself is new, and therefore somehow ants came to know that as the solution. So how is it possible? Will nature somehow give solution directly to the animals? And for us to understand the problem, we have to use our intelligence, we have to do research, we have to analyze, and then for finding out the solution, again we have to do all this process. Why it is like that? That's an extremely important question. Think it over. In addition to that one, can we now say that instead of straight away tackling a problem, we'll pose it for animals if it is possible, and if they can find a very quick solution, then we can adopt that solution, or after finding that thing, we can analyze whether it suits us or not. So that is a better approach because the ants, and of course, the scientists knew that hydrogen peroxide is a solution for that problem. In some such situations where we do not know the solution, we can simply follow the animal by keeping some 10 different chemicals or 100 chemicals or some leaves, etc., etc., and study where actually the animal will go and which one it will eat or pick up or do something. Then probably the solution exists there. So such an approach appears to be better, and somehow the animals are doing it without knowing almost anything. This is an important thing which has to be further understood, or sometimes there may be some other reason, like in case of ants, maybe after that particular fungus it was feeling thirsty and therefore it went and thinking that it is water, it was drinking hydrogen peroxide, maybe like that. So we have to further investigate so many things, and that will be discussed in the future series. Thank you very much. Please give your opinions.